Okay. All right, great. All right, good to see everybody. Special welcome to my sister. Wow, this is a very big thing. This is a very big thing. You gotta hear.
Oh, she's back? Okay, good. Louise is back. She played Cosmic Louise.
Oh, my sister Louise is back. Wow, that's great. Okay. Yeah. Hi, Terry, how are you? Okay. So let's talk about the first entree point to the Seder. So just as a quick reframing of what we got. The night when we read the Haggadah, right? We're gonna need these terms. Haggadah, right? Haggadah is a very important word. It's a very important term. So it's built on the following model, right? So let's just chip off these points quickly. Vayomer le'emor means to say. And when we use the word vayomer in a Jewish text, it means everything that God said to Moshe, for example, was written. Everything that person A said to person B was written. Vayomer, check. Vaidaber means there's a lot more that was said than was recorded, right? It's expansive. It's open. The Aseret Dibirot, the 10 Commandments, right? Those commandments where you have Lo Tirtzach, for example, person shouldn't kill, person shouldn't steal, Kabed et avicha ve'et imecha, a person should respect his or her parents, mom and dad, right? These are very concise, but they're in the context of Vayidaber, which means there are tens and potentially hundreds of mitzvot that follow. Good? So when we have a Vayidaber, put your different hat on and know that you can be very, very expansive in explaining it. Okay? Drop down further. We have Vayagid. Vayagid means, and that's the Haggadah, it means I'm telling something over in my own words. It's totally editorialized, totally subjective. Good? Which means if person A has a certain spin on the holiday, he or she should vocalize that, should verbalize that during the night, right? Lahagid means I take it, I make it mine, I change it, I build it, I do what I want, I refine it, not change, but I refine it, I build it, and so on. Good? So the Haggadah is based on an expansive, developmental, personal. So everybody comes around the table for the Seder and should have plenty of their own ideas to share based on the fact that they're their own ideas. I don't want to parrot somebody else. I want to walk in, my notebook, my notes, my ideas, the Haggadah, the Bincha, and I want to share these with my children. And when I'm sharing them with my children, I'm sharing them in a context of building my children. So what I'm saying over at any holiday meal or Shabbat meal, we know, right, is instructive, is fundamental to my children. But when I'm saying it over the night of Pesach, it's that much more, and I'm giving them their roadmap from my perspective. Good? Okay. Huh? Exactly to follow, exactly. Now, go one step further, and this is a point that we may or may not get to today in depth, but own it in your minds. When you go to lissaper, that's the next term, lissaper. What is lissaper or sipur? Mary, what does that mean? A story, beautiful. So when we tell a story, right? When you tell a story, how do you tell the story? How does it work? You tell it expansively. You tell it leisurely. You wander and you come back, right? The storyline isn't always integrous. It's not always
a lot of excitement.
Yeah, you could go into excitement. You can power down. You can pause. When we say a story, when we move from a hardcore intellectual X into a story, now it becomes remarkably informal, right? So the Haggadah, the night of the Seder, is Haggadah plus story. And that's what makes it so absolutely remarkable. I'm putting things in my words, to my understanding. Everybody takes the same pieces. Oh, what did you study on that? What thoughts do you have on that? And then what's the conversation next morning? Lisa, the conversation next morning in shul. Well, how late did you go? And how late did you go? And how late did you go? Right? And the how late did you go is actually a beautiful thing. It's actually a beautiful thing. What's that? Oh yeah, it's a whole thing. So that's what we're pining for. We're pining for our understanding with our vantage point and slant, and we're pining for the comfort and the presence to let it go and just enjoy it and keep going with it. Okay, so that just frames our approach. Good. Okay, we spoke last week a little bit about the Kiddush. We're going to move into the opening words of the night, and these words, the kehalachma anya, this bread of affliction, so to speak, right? We open up. You guys have it? Everybody has a different book. We should just get just everybody. We should just get.
Bring from the house. We have one in there.
Let me see it in your book, Jen. Okay. Okay. It's go right after the Kiddush. Oh, it has all of this. Okay. Yeah, now, let me just walk around a minute and I'll just show you guys what it is. Kahalach Manya on the bottom of the page. Yeah, you have it? Okay. Perfect, yeah.
Yeah, maybe then.
Okay. So the halachma anya, we open up, right? We open up the Seder with the words halachma anya, the bread of affliction, we call it, the achalo avatana, that our forefathers ate, be'arab de Mitzrayim, that our forefathers ate in the land of Egypt, called Ifchin Yatev Yachol, who's ever hungry, please join us for the meal. Called Tzrich Yatev Yifsach, who's ever is in need, we're here to help you. Hashata Hacha, we're here now. L'shana haba'ah, l'shana haba'ah. Yisrael. Next year we will be at home in Israel. Hashata Avdei, we are currently enslaved. L'shana haba'ah b'nei chorin. Now, the way people typically translate this is different than how we're going to do it. But before we get there, let's just qualify what we have here. We have an opening couple of sentences that are completely truncated from everything else, seemingly. These were added much later. We believe they were added hundreds of years later, these couple of sentences. And these sentences are the only words that are in Aramaic. So you can't take this like everything else. It has to be looked upon separately. Good. The way it's typically explained is, this is the bread of affliction. You see this matzah? This is the bread of affliction that our forefathers ate in Egypt. Anybody hungry? Come join us. One second. If it's the bread of affliction, not so appetizing, come join us, right? Anybody hungry? Come join us. By the way, is anybody joining us at that point? Nobody's joining us at that point. The door's closed. The Seder started. Well, and then if people had a need, they would have articulated it already. We would have invited them from before. So it's an empty invitation. It doesn't mean anything. So what do you mean, called Difrin Yater B'Yachol? What are you talking about? Who am I inviting? I'm not inviting anybody, right? Called Tzlich Yater B'Yifsach. Anybody who has a greater need, come and we will help you with that need. It doesn't have any legs, right? I'm not talking to anybody. I'm not offering anything. And then
It's putting you in the mood.
it's putting me in the mood, okay?
That would be a reason.
Huh?
That'd be a reason.
There has to be a reason, right? Yes. Huh?
Past, from the past, from Abraham, all the way to the future generations. So you open it up.
Love it. But when you invite the person to join you, what are you doing? Huh? But it's not an honest invitation, right? Huh? Because who am I inviting? Oh, am I talking to the people around the table, maybe? If you want to raise the hand, drop. I'll do it. Just press it up a few and then press done. It's polite. Okay, it's polite. Okay, maybe it's polite. Who else? It's cold, right?
I did, I raised it to 69.
Okay, that's good. That'll be warm. Yeah. No, she just raised it. Okay. It's cold. You're feeling it? Let's try it. Let's wait a few minutes. What do you think, Rachel? What do you say? What is this?
I'm just thinking that you say you're not supposed to.
Right. Not supposed to give a whole thing.
Unless it's not really there for that, unless it's there because, I mean, right afterwards has the 4 questions, it's there to inspire the children to ask questions.
So maybe it's focused internally, right? One option is that maybe it's focused internally. Let me check that.
But you're not giving an invitation. Wait, I have to say something. Of course, all of our invitations are sincere, but not after this, not after we started. Once you started, there's no sincere invitation,
Okay.
right?
So what do we want to say? So maybe, as Jane is saying, maybe it's not geared to outsiders. Maybe it's geared to my children, right? Maybe it's geared to my family. But if it's geared to my family, what's the message? So you want to go to Jem's message that we're connecting the generations? That's a possibility. Good. What else could it be? What would you say? That's more positive. Great. What else would you say? Doors open. Okay, doors open.
During Sukkot, we have Ushpizim. I don't know, maybe we have them here too.
Right. Maybe it's a form of Ushpizin where we're inviting the greatest men back in. They're not coming in physically, they're coming in spiritually. Beautiful. What else could it be? Mazal, let's go. What do you say? What? What? He says it in Arabic? Really?
Yeah, so
So that's certainly a part of it. That's certainly a part of it, for sure. And what about hungry for knowledge? So that would go to inviting your children, them to speak, right?
I also
Nice.
think it's to create the mood.
To create the mood. How do you create the mood?
Like, okay, I mean, first you got everybody's attention. And now you, like, what are we here for? This
Okay,
is, you know, this is.
So,
Don't we leave the door open?
Yeah, we did Ashkenazim.
okay, okay. We give him a course. We give him a wine glass, right? A glass of wine. Right. I'm not sure who's coming, honestly. I'm not sure, but let me give you a little different approach to it. So again, we're basing it on this work. We're basing it on this work. This is sort of a grandchild, so to speak, of the Gaon Mivilna, which was the giant based on whom he and a handful of others, but primarily him, that we did put him on. This is Rav Kook, the first Ashkenaz chief rabbi of Israel. He is a mystic, he's a Kabbalist, he's a poet, he's a linguist, magnificent, brilliant personality. And we're basing it on his more Kabbalistic version of the Haggadah. So just to qualify it. Okay. He says as follows. So let's go back. We'll review one or two things that we've learned quickly and we'll step into it. What is chesed? Some of us learned this together. What is chesed? Huh? No, Rachel, let's go. We learned this till 17 times and you don't remember it. No, chesed and tzaddik, different. Come on, give me the chesed. That's tzaddik, great. Give me chesed. No, come on. Chesed, come on. All right, chesed. No. Absolutely no.
Too basic.
The dog ate my notebook, right? That's the thing here. All right, let's go. Okay, let's go like this. Good. Let's build from what's being said. Okay, chesed is as follows. We have a baseline chesed. The baseline chesed is as following. The baseline chesed, which is what Abraham Avinu discovered, is that everything, let's go. What do you got? Huh? Yeah, excellent. Everything that was ever created, everything that ever existed, everything that exists is absolutely interconnected, right? So everybody in this room has a relationship with everybody outside, who they may or may never meet. Everybody in this room has a connection with everything that goes on the planet and everything that goes on beyond this planet, right? And Abraham Avinu discovered that. That's what he discovered. Forget about him being kind and welcoming. Leave that for a minute. Abraham Avinu is the father of monotheism. He's the person who discovered the idea of there being one creator and one creator who remains involved with what he created. That was massive upheaval, right? Okay, good. So Abraham Avinu doesn't do chesed. He discovered chesed. Good.
So,
Okay.
I have a question. So you're saying that because what he discovered was that because there is one God that was the creator, therefore everything is intercreated?
Fantastic. Perfect. Let's go. He first discovers that everything is interconnected, right? Then he says, to Jane's point, if everything is absolutely interconnected, then what? There's one God, right?
But there's a proof.
That's the proof. Because if things were bifurcated, if things in the ocean had nothing to do with things in space, and if things in Brooklyn had nothing to do with things in Palestine, in Jerusalem, right? Then there could be a God of the ocean and a God of the dry land and a God of Brooklyn and a God of the Middle East, right? When Abraham Avinu discovers that everything is interconnected, then he steps up and he says, if everything is interconnected, then there's one God. I can't have multiple creators and then have everything interconnected. That's a massive step, right? Great, good so far? Yeah.
Is it a prophecy or he just came to that on his own?
That's what he came to. Excellent, excellent. He comes to one who's on through massive searching, and what's really not talked about enough, it's not talked about enough, is there was precedent for this before. And there was belief in this before. And what Abraham's greatest greatness is not that he discovered it, that he championed it. Adam knew it, Noah knew it, others in between Noah and Abraham all knew it. They all knew it,
But they didn't have.
but they couldn't champion it. He was the champion of it. Abraham Avinu didn't discover God. God was already known. Adam knew God, Noach knew God, and many others in between knew God. And that's why at the end of the book of Bereshit, when they list all the generations between Noach and Abraham, the 10 generations, the point of listing the 10 generations is to force us to look into who connected to God and who didn't. Point being that Abraham is not the first, but he's the champion. And what he reaffirms and what he's willing to fight for is the fact that there's one absolutely interconnected everything. Therefore, step up, there's one God, and step down. If everything is absolutely interconnected, then what? Fantastic. Then everybody has a responsibility to everybody else, because nobody lives on an island. Nobody lives on an island based on this, right? And the tree can't fall in the forest without anybody hearing it, right? And we know that old adage that the tree falls in the forest. The tree can't fall in the forest without anybody hearing it. It's not possible. Good? Great. So we're on the halach ma'anya, right? We started by saying the premise to everything we build from is chesed, interconnectedness, one God responsibility. Okay, now put in the back of your mind that if I'm offering help to somebody, what I'm doing is, because there ain't nobody there, what I'm doing is I'm framing this as a chesed mindset, as a chesed initiative. Good. Now, if it's a chesed initiative, the words I'm about to say, well then, why are we bringing it out tonight? And there's a couple of interesting points to that. First is as follows. We say that, and this is another important paradigm. Okay. Mary, with me? We say that God wants only good for us, right? God wants only good. And what God does is says as follows, that if the good is to have value, it must be earned. This is a very big point from the Kabbalistic point of view. In other words, if you want good for everybody, just let them have good, right? If God wants good, if God's essence is good, then let everybody just have good and call it a day, right? What would be the point?
No partnership.
Meaningless.
Right.
No relationship.
Yeah, it would be meaningless. It would be valueless. It would be valueless. So what does God do? He constricts himself on the one hand, and he lets things get bumpy from time to time in order for the goodest good to be earned. In order for the goodest good to be earned, with the perspective that if it was hand-fed, it would become lazy. A person's sights would drop. They would strive for little or nothing. So we're going to be constantly challenged. And as Rachel started to say with Sadiq, the better you are, the more challenge you're going to get. The harder you work, it doesn't become easier. The harder makes it hard. The better makes it harder. The finer makes it harder. The smarter makes it harder. Everything makes it harder. So the person who's checked out is going to have very little challenges because he probably ignored all of his challenges already. God sort of wrote him off, God forbid, already, and he's off the grid. But the person who is growing, who is building, who has a family, who's learning every day, who's being challenged by stuff every day, that's the person who's still getting warmed up and still, yeah, good.
It's a very unsettling concept.
Are you kidding me?
Me, anyway, because
I'm gonna get a hot water. Keep on into it.
draw the line between being challenged because you're good and being punished because you're not good.
Okay, so this is very question.
Loaded.
That's what it, you know. Like, is the generate, did things happen in, bad things happen to good people because they're being challenged? Or did they weren't good enough and so they got punished?
Okay, so let's talk about some of this. First of all, this is not an easy premise. It sounds very simple. Sounds very obvious. that God is all good. We cool with that? Everybody else okay with that? Mazal, you're much too quiet today. Everything all right?
I'm tired.
Oh, okay. All right. We need your input. We need your input. Okay, we need your input. Okay, God is absolute good. Everybody's okay with that. Good. Yeah? Okay. The God assesses, again, we're using borrowed terms, that everything he creates and as an extension of him, as a manifestation of him. Meaning, if he's all good, it's all good. Right. That's cool, right? Good. Then God takes a step back, so to speak, and you might tie this to Gan Eden, the Garden of Eden. You might. Could be a very nice, connection. And he says, but if the good is an unearned good, then it's going to be valueless. Everybody okay with that so far? If the good is an unearned good, it has no value. Okay, all that is okay. Now, Jane, to your point, in order for good to be earned, what does that mean? Well, the first criteria we have to have in mind when we're trying to answer that question is that there is very little punishment in this world. There's very little. We have to own that idea. The overwhelming majority of reward and otherwise comes later.
But we see that. We see bad people all day long.
That's right. That's right. Very good. That's right. There's very little of that here. But what is a lot of here, Jane, what there's a lot of here is that the good people are going to get pounded. And then they're going to get more pounded. And then they're going to get more pounded. And that's the system. And that shows the greatest love of God. If you have, let's say, we love all our children are perfect, right? Between us, let's say there might be the possibility of one child being brighter than the others. Are you going to be tougher on that child? If you weren't tougher on that child, you'd be a delinquent parent. There's one child who's more sensitive and more giving and therefore needs a better. No, there's one child more creative. You know what? All my kids are the same. I know, but there's one, your third girl has fabulous artistic ability. I don't bother me with that stuff. Would that be appropriate parenting? That would be an absolute failure. So if you as a parent saw that daughter number 3, for example, has this fabulous creative ability, you're going to push her hard to get there. And the daughter number 3 say, why are you so tough on me? Daughter number 1 and number 2, you let them go. But I have to go to 4 art classes a week. They don't have to go to 1. They're hanging out and I'm doing this thing. But that's exactly what we're talking about here. Okay? The person will be pushed to realize his or her potential. They'll be pushed hard. And then either what happens is we have the Elohim model, which is accountability, day-to-day involvement, where God is sitting on our heads right here and saying, I'm going to push you until I get you there. And then when I get you to here, I'm going to start pushing you again. That's what we want. Okay?
I know, that has something.
I'm going to just check the temperature.
Like,
It's not going up.
No, so. It's broken.
So my question,
I tried it again.
my
It was
comment.
on a whole thing. I took it off. Damn, I'm sure.
But has to break out of it. It's tremendous strength and energy to break out, but it has to break out alone. otherwise it dies.
Right.
So when the butterfly
Nice.
comes out, in order to fly, in order to be around, it has to be by yourself
Nice,
and take that.
Nice.
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 So there was a study, I don't know, and there was a study where the caterpillar has come out of the cocoon with really high temperature. So what a scientist did was cut a little piece of the cocoon, so the caterpillar could come out easier.
Ah, great. That's great.
Didn't have to work hard. It was meaningless.
That's great. That's great. That's a perfect analogy. Huh? Oh,
So I've been through my own hardships in my life that
okay, listen up. Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
only made me grow and be a much better person. Everything I went through was in my benefit, made me grow, but yet I pray every single day that my children shouldn't face such hardships and that they should. Why am I praying for that? Like, you don't want to see your children suffer and you don't want them to face hardship, but you know that the only way they're gonna grow.
Who said you should pay for your children
I
not to
mean,
have them?
I don't want them to suffer. I can't help it. I don't.
So the question becomes like this, very good, very good. Question, I'm gonna give you an example
Don't want harm.
I'm gonna speak to Leslie's point, but on a mundane level. I'm gonna speak to Leslie, and I mentioned this to Jamie a couple of times, speak to Leslie, but on a mundane level, right? A couple of my sons came into the career market, with this incredibly strong economy. We had 15, 16 years of a non-traditional economy, right? When did we ever, in my business experience, we had 8 years, we had 9 years, maybe we grabbed the 10th year, that was good, and then everybody got clobbered. And I told her a bunch of times, I said, it's a disaster for my sons that they've had a 15-year run. They're finished because they don't know anything about reality and they know nothing about business. What a shame. And what did I tell you 10 times? I said, I can't wait. They must fail soon. And unfortunately for them, it took 5, 6 years, which is an eternity when you're 35 years old. It took 5, 6 years too long. So when the market now collapsing in several respects happened, they could totally blindside, right? So I was praying for them. I was praying for a recession 7 years ago. Okay? It sounds not so nice, right? But the reality is, if the lack of it caused a massive dysfunction with the up and coming business and career people, their heads are spinning. They don't know what happened. They're lost. They're lost because it went too long. So to Leslie's point, nobody wants to, nobody wants anybody to suffer and have pain. Nobody wants that. But the big issue is this. It's not to have the pain, and I don't want to sound cliched. I'm sorry if I do, because I know this will. It's to not grow maximally from the challenge or the setback. That's the tragedy. The tragedy is not what happened, although there may be things like that. The real thing to worry about is, how did I grow? How am I growing? And that's the thing to really be concerned about. The thing to be, yeah.
So that's really a Jewish concept.
It's very much a Jewish concept.
I'm thinking more on a national level,
Right.
the tragedies that happened to Bnei Israel or to Jewish people, like even by comparing, Israel and what recently happened compared to the Arabs and the Palestinians, what happened to them when the state of Israel was created, and
Right.
let's say they did get displaced, or let's say whatever, maybe they did have some discomfort,
Right.
but instead of growing from it, they chose to.
Right. They chose to go back to the 10th century. That's what they did. They called them the 10th century culture. It's mind-boggling that they chose to go back to a barbaric period in human history and outdo the barbarism that was then. That's who they are. And what do we choose to do? We choose to engage life. And we push the bar all the time. And what does that bring? It brings pain, it brings stress, it brings fear, it brings all that stuff. The assumption is that a person has Torah, a person has love and relationships, a person has mitzvot, a person has chesed. So they're suffering, but suffering within a context, within a world that doesn't erase the suffering, but that puts it into a context that now lets me learn and grow. Yeah.
This is an aside, but this is how I heard it. As a little girl, I was scared of numbers. And every time I looked at it, she said to me, and we did. She was end up taking
Oh,
every time.
incredible.
And remember, when that thing was nauseous, from looking at her number. Every day was her birthday. Every day was her birthday. And I would stare at those numbers. And she said, you're gonna be a doctor, you're gonna do this, you're gonna push, and I get a doctor, because I stared at her number. So if you think of that, exactly what you said.
Fantastic.
Because you know it is.
Fantastic.
You know, and it's true, we have to be strong. We have to take that pain and dance.
And dance. And the biggest challenge is, am I dancing? Where am I dancing? Is the dance that I'm doing complicated enough? Am I pushing myself hard enough? That's the biggest issue. And the last thing we want is to God to say, okay, do what you want. But what do you mean? God not saying do what you want means he's going to keep pushing me. He's going to keep pushing you, God willing. I'll tell you, and I taught in a formal classroom for many years, right? And the kid that I gave up on was not the troublemaker kid, right? And obviously was not the super bright kid. It was the apathetic kid. That kid, I just said, I can't reach that kid. The kid doesn't care. And when it reached the point, I was in the formal classroom for a number of years. When it reached the point where the apathetic kids outnumbered the interested kids, that's when I stepped back. Because apathy is the worst thing that could be. Now, we're not suggesting that people that live through difficult times are apathetic, but apathy, even in a little bit, is a major failure. So,
No, but to her point, it's not only important to survive what you're going through, you should thrive.
that's exactly the point. No, but that's God's point. She's perfect, say perfectly. That's exactly right. So when someone goes through a difficult time, as you mentioned, when somebody goes through a difficult time, and nobody's, God forbid, judging or this anybody, but ideally, what should happen is a person should say, okay, I have a massive growth opportunity. I have massive development of who I am. Am I using that? And at the end of the day, that's the real barometer of life. How I was given this level of intellect, this level of sensitivity, this level of the ability to project myself, to influence people, this skill set. Did I take that and learn from all the bumps and make myself an exceptional person? And that's the biggest challenge that everybody has. And that being an exceptional person never ends. It never ends. The quest for that, the demand on that never ends. We've said it 20 times, as many times as we said the chesed thing. We said there's no word for retire in biblical Hebrew. Lashon HaKodesh. There's no word for retire. Huh? Yeah, he got into the saddle when he was 80. He got into the saddle as 80. Somebody told me, huh?
He said, I still have more work.
That's right. That's right. Somebody told me a great story about Daddy the other, because it was his yahrzeit, my father's yahrzeit. So Joe Mansour, he's very involved in Shadet Zion for many years. He said, your father came over to me 4 or 5 years before he passed away. He was 90. And he had these plans in his hand, and he rolled them out on the table, and he said as following, Joe, this is what we're going to do in the next 4 years. He told him this is a 4-phase plan. We got the first 4 years, the second, the third, and the fourth. Now Joe is doing the math, right? He knows my father is 90, and he knows that by the time the plan is fully realized, he'll be 106, right? That was his thing. Okay, but that's how he lived his life. Not everybody has the opportunity to do that. Some people do, some people don't. And there are parts of this thing that we can't ever understand. Okay, there are parts we can't ever understand. But as long as we're coherent, as long as we can think, as long as we can act, as long as we can make decisions, we have to make sure that we're moving and growing. We have to make sure that we can. Well, if a person is at a point in his life where he can't anymore, okay, then he did everything already. That's it. But as long as I can, I must. Rabbi Soloveitchik wrote famously, he said that if I want friction, imagine, Leslie, that's what he said. I want friction. I want friction. That's what he wrote. What? It's a what of life? It's, yes. Okay, so talk about it.
Well, you always say also on the monitor, once it goes like this. So, you said that before, once the monitor, the heart monitor.
Right.
It's over, we need the ups and downs.
Yeah, that's what we want. So talk about the pattern of life article for a minute. Yeah.
Data sheet or the resilience, or the characters of data sheet. So that's what it is, resilience, get knocked down like that, how am I gonna get back up?
Okay, but good. But we're getting back up higher. We're taking the lessons, we're chucking the experience, and we're getting to a higher place. You get beat up, God willing, God willing, God willing, God willing. This is, by the way, this is why the class is not a lot bigger. I got my thing right. This is the thing. Right? Yeah, you get beat up. You don't claw back to where you were. You claw to a higher place.
Let's
To a higher place.
talk about reality just for a second.
I'm sorry. I'm happy to answer your point, but I want to be very clear on something. What I was saying is 100% reality, not 99. Okay, so now go ahead.
No, but not everybody comes back from it.
That's true. And you know something? Excellent point. Not everybody comes back from it. And therefore, what is the critical element of that? Our responsibility to that, everybody. Arevut, people misunderstand something. We'll get to today's class in a minute. We're not even getting there. Right. We'll get there at 1:05. The people think, yeah. People think that what Judaism is about is unity. Shtuyot. Not about unity. It's about collective responsibility. That's what Judaism is about. Arevut. It's about collective responsibility. Unity is very nice.
How do you say unity?
Achdut, right? Achdut is, we don't say Kol Yisrael, we say Kol Yisrael Arevim, which means we have a collective responsibility. Therefore, when if someone is going through a difficult time, they have the right and opportunity, and we have the obligation to be there for them. That's what Arevut means. And when does Arevut end? Never. And what is the limitations? There aren't any, except if it gets to a point where a person's own life is being compromised, then you have to pull back a little. But otherwise, and from a reality point of view, yeah, can a person do it on his own, on her own? No. Not necessary. But like we said before, and this is very important, let's talk about one of the points of this thing. What we said before is when HaKadosh Baruch Hu takes that slap, at somebody's life, When HaKadosh Baruch Hu does that, because he wants a gooder good, a better good, there's more there, there's greater opportunity. You can't even see it. Can't see it, but obviously he can. The same way a parent can see what a child can't, right? Because we have the experience, we have the vantage point, we have the purview, right? God has endless purview, right? There's one other key point here, and Jane, this goes to your point. God will always put the soulmates into your life to help guide you through that time. They are always there. Now, what happens? They are always there. That's a commitment. That's a signed contract. God says, contract signing number one is, I'm gonna make the good better. And how am I gonna do that? Either they're gonna get the message one way or the other. And when does that end? Not until the end. Core element number two in the contract is that when a person is challenged, I will bring one or two or three, not more, people into his or her life to help navigate that course. They're always there. They will always be there. What happens very often is people put their eyes down. They take on another Western perspective of not being trusting, right? The Jewish method is very clear on this. And that is, put your trust in someone until they disappoint you. You don't have to earn my trust. That's a Western perspective. That, you know what earning my trust means? It means everybody is alone. It means everybody is frightened. It means everybody is looking how he might be endangered by the other person. The Jewish perspective is, I'm not going to compromise my life, but I will give you my trust until you disappoint me. We do not earn another person's trust. And we see it in today's society. Everybody is alone. Thankfully, we're not. We have community, we have Torah, but people, how could you be more alone than ever? How could it be? You pick up the phone, you talk to anybody anywhere on the planet. You know why we're more alone than ever? Because we're less trusting than ever. So you know what? Trust and be hurt. You're better off to trust and be hurt than to tell somebody, earn my trust. When does somebody earn your trust? Most people who have the criteria, you have to earn my trust, nobody ever earns their trust. Because nobody's perfect, and everybody's going to say something dumb at some point, and everybody's going to compromise that trust to some level at some point, and nothing is absolute. So what do we do when we've had that bump, God willing? We reach out to the one or two people who have been placed strategically in our lives at that point, and we go for a cup of coffee, and we say, this is where I am. I don't know what to do. I'm scared, I'm in pain, and I need, what are your thoughts? And as we talked about in other contexts, this is a person who will never judge another person, who cares about you, doesn't have an axe to grind, doesn't have an agenda, just simply cares. I know I use those people all the time in my life. There's not a lot of them. I have 2 or 3 in my life. I cherish them, and everybody has them. But you gotta be willing to be vulnerable. You have to be vulnerable. And a lot of people aren't vulnerable. They're not willing. They're too protective. I've been hurt before. I've been disappointed before. So what? So what? Who says that means anything?
And who hasn't been?
And who hasn't been? And when does the vulnerability end? Never. And when does the growth end? Never. The worst thing that we want is to spend 120 years, God willing, on the planet and look back at all the things we could have done. You're not going to look back at the ups and downs, because the ups and downs relative to an eternal life are going to look like a joke. They're going to look like a parking ticket. So that's not what you're going to look back to. We're going to look back to the delta between what I could have been and what I was. That's the tragedy. The tragedy is not the ups and downs. You with me, Jen?
Yep.
Should we go to the class topic now? Or I think we're wrapping. Yeah, Flora.
Everything is there. The way it is. After marriage, the government and the family, the women and the son. The creator and the child. Everybody.
And how many thousands of young women? Thousands. 10,000 women. Fantastic. That is fantastic. Right. Awesome. Thank you, everybody. Now I have a pass. I don't have to prepare. I have a pass for next week.
Thank you.
Thank you, bye. Take care.
Bye, all right, miss you. Have a good